Namaste and welcome to Satsang today. So Satsang is for the awakening to who we really, really are, to who we always have been, and to the understanding that we're not who we thought we were. And this is the reason for Satsang. Satsang has been held for as long as there's been people, there's been a form of Satsang, which just means to gather together to look at the truth, to associate with truth, to be the truth. You are that truth already, but to live consciously as that. So it's more than just an understanding in our mind. It's also coming to live as that, beyond belief, beyond faith, and into actual experience. The truth is that there is only one of us here. There's only one being here. And that one being is the only thing that exists. And that one being can express itself as a human being, as a speck of dust, as a subatomic particle, as a galaxy, and everything in between. And in Satsang, we're really looking at how to recognize that, to come to see that, and to let go of what we think we are not. And what we think we are, rather, our old idea of who we thought we were. Most of us have ideas and stories that come from this idea that we're a separate person, that we are as someone. And at this point in our journey, we can really feel that we're someone on the way to awakening, to trying to find the truth, seeking the truth, rather than the understanding and the realization that I am that truth already. And we can get caught for a very long time in trying to reach the truth. Certainly was that way for me. And it's really that I want to speak about, what holds us back from realizing who we are, even more clearly, even more deeply. What is it that we are unknowingly doing, that when we stop doing it, that our realization, our awakening happens so much more efficiently or effectively, we could say? What is it that when we see it, we can let it go, and we're much more able to function as the infinite self, the one being, consciously? And for me, eventually, it came down to one thing. It was a simple thing to see, not always so simple to apply, but I wanted to highlight it today so that we can begin to move deeper into that. When we begin to see who we are, we're also going to be letting go of who we are not. Old ideas, the idea that we're a separate person seeking enlightenment, having to merge into God or awakening or whatever, that we're responsible for making sure that happens, that we are someone who has to transcend our mind or our karmic patterns, whatever you want to call those. And these karmic patterns are going to come up. They're just stories of who you thought you were. Some stories are generally talking about the fact that we don't feel safe and our attempts to try to feel safer. And some are the talking about our sense of worthiness. We might not feel quite good enough, and our mind might be busy thinking about how to feel better about that, feel better about ourselves. And it might even use awakening as the ultimate goal, the carrot at the end of the stick. When I'm finally awakened, then I'll feel good enough. And that was one thing that I had going on too. So whatever story it is, whatever story keeps playing, whichever emotion keeps coming up, and whatever situation keeps playing out in our life, the same old thing over and over again. They're really the same thing. The outer experience in our body, our life, our relationships, our work, and the emotion and the story behind the emotion are all the same thing showing up three different ways. And the one thing that we do for quite some time to perpetuate it, unknowingly, of course, is when some karmic pattern comes up, some emotion or some barrage of thoughts or some experience in our life, we take ownership of that as a separate being. So if you just think for a moment or remember the last time something big came up for you, and maybe that's happening right now as you're in the satsang, something went wrong in your life or some emotion came up or something happened. Can you remember the thoughts that were going on at the time? So some fear comes up again. What are the thoughts that go with that? Usually they're thoughts as a separate self. Usually we go into this narrative saying, why is it coming up again? What have I done wrong? How do I make it go away? Why am I not transcending this? And those thoughts for me were relating to me as a person, right? A separate being. If there's only one being, then these karmic patterns aren't yours. They're just emotions, thoughts. They don't belong to you. This is even more clearer after you've started to see who you really are, that which is everywhere and intangible and insubstantial. And yet the only thing that exists, omnipresent, intelligence, before form, and yet you can appear as form. So next time you forget to do something, or you miss an appointment, or you do something incorrectly, or some emotion comes up, or your mind is going absolutely crazy, doing its thing, what do you actually do with that? If you really kind of focus and look at how you talk to yourself in that moment, are they thoughts from a separate person? Are you owning this? This stuff comes up. Are you picking it up as your karmic pattern? Are you taking that arising as a separate being, a seeming separate being? What if it's never actually what's arising for us, but how we're handling it when it arises? So some fear comes up, or some shame, or anger, or whatever it is, and it just comes up. It's just there in the body being felt. Can you do that? Thank you. Can you do that without any problem? Can you do that without any sense of separation? Can you do that without any need to pick it up as a separate person? What happens when you just let the thing arise? Can you allow the thoughts to go crazy without blaming yourself for it, without taking any separate sense of ownership of it? And this is huge for me when I realized this, because I realized it wasn't actually this stuff that was troubling me or delaying my awakening. It was this one thing I was doing. Whenever anything arose inside, which life is going to stimulate, right? It's going to stimulate it. Then there's going to be thoughts about why it's happening. Your mind is going to want to know why this fear has come back again, or this guilt and shame, or if there's some pain in the body or something going wrong in one of your relationships, etc. So if you can see the thoughts that are going on at the time when this comes up, and maybe you can think about it right now. What was the last thing that went wrong for you? And what was your commentary going on inside at the time? And did you take it as a separate person? Because for the infinite self is going to say, well, it just came up, it just happened. End of story, right? There's nothing else going on than that. But the separate sense of someone would say, what have I done wrong? Why is this happening again? I thought I got rid of this. What if that is the only story that really matters in that moment? What if everything else that's coming up for you, I mean, everything else, is happening only because you're taking ownership of it as a separate person? So you can apply this even if you haven't really seen who you are yet, who you actually are. If you know even intellectually that you're not a separate being, but haven't actually directly discovered that as yet, you can still apply this. So what was your last problem spiritually? And what did you tell yourself about it? Just take a moment now and think about that. Was your commentary based on someone, or was it from the infinite self? So if some emotion arose for me now, or something went wrong, someone's just knocked on my door live as we're doing this, that really wasn't supposed to. There could be this arising of a story. Why has that happened? Why didn't I think about that ahead of time? Why did I not write a note? All of that stuff. But now the capacity is just to let that happen. It happened. And you can practice this with the easier things. It might be challenging when there's a strong emotion or some physical pain in the body, but the only story is don't tell stories about your stories, right? Don't take ownership of it as a person. As you see who you are more clearly, what's not you and never has been is going to rise to the surface to try to leave. If you start to criticize yourself, why is this happening? What am I doing wrong? Then you literally shut your system down and it can't leave. It seems to go away, but it's really just gone back down. It's going to have to come back up again at some point. So recognizing that there's just this one story, why this is happening to you, why this is coming up for you. Can you step back from that one story? Can you step back from taking ownership of it? Because for a while, things might come up, right? Emotions that need to be felt, relationships that need to be looked at and worked through a little bit, ways of thinking that are very old in separation thinking, so thinking as a separate self. And for a little while, after seeing who you are, and even before, the process is to let them come up and let them go. And if you need to do a little investigation into them, that's fine. But do that as the infinite self, a little question and contemplation or self-inquiry. If you skipped your meditation this morning and have only just realized, what are you going to say to yourself about it? And I can't stress how important this is. This is the one story that perpetuates all the seeking and suffering. And all the things that come up from now on, it can be an opportunity for you to not take ownership of them. It's just an emotion. It might be intense. It might be pulsing through the body. It might be a strong sense of overwhelm or shame or something, fear, whatever, anger surging. Can you just let it happen without having to know why? Why is it happening? Anything that you try to figure out at that moment is going to slow down its passing through. It's trying to leave. Actually, it's trying to turn back into peace. But it needs you to just let it happen for that to occur. So what is your main story? And are you ready to drop that? What if you didn't know why the next emotion arises when it arises? What if you are just open in that moment? And I don't know why this is happening. I'm certainly not going to claim it as a separate being. This is my fault. I haven't looked at this enough. I haven't worked on it enough. I haven't transcended it enough. I haven't done enough contemplation on it. I haven't done enough, or I've done too much of the wrong thing. Whatever the story is at that moment that you go into. For me, it was very simple. It had many shapes, but the story went like this. This is happening because I'm doing this wrong. There's something wrong with me and something wrong with the way I'm moving towards awakening. And that was the one story every time in various, it dressed itself up in different ways, but it was always about me as a separate person. And I finally saw that, I was able to let that go. All the karmic patterns I've ever had came back up again once and one time only. And that was to give me an opportunity to not pick it up. My fear story came up twice. Everything else one more time. Why is fear back? I don't know. It just is. Apparently that's what's happening today. That would be how the consciousness, the presence, the awareness would say, right? As a human being. So whatever's happening in your life, don't take it personally. Don't take it as a separate person. The best that you can, especially your spiritual progress or seeming lack thereof on the path to awakening. Especially your karmic patterns when they arise again. They're not yours. They're not yours at all. I wanted to try to wrap that up into a little package that hopefully is useful and can be applied in a spiritual SOS, those moments when the mind is going crazy or the body's very contracted or there's a strong emotion playing. It's just a energy moving through the system, right? That's all it really is. What you do with it is so important. It's not what's happening, it's what you're saying about what's happening that is really quite vital. So I'm going to try to answer these 4 questions that have been sent in, and then I'll open it up for questions here. Let's go through these. First one says, thank you, Helen and team. I'm hoping I can join you for retreat in the fall. My question, sometimes I get drawn into the personal self, doing all these human things, and all of a sudden I would become aware of the still presence. Lately, often after that, a sadness arises about losing this separate identity, not being this person. Many times throughout the day, I'm aware of a stillness, and when I inquire into the small self, I can't find it. But that is only when I inquire, or sometimes I can have a period where it feels obvious, or when the person is upset, but I am still. But most times the person feels the most real, and there is just peace in the background. It feels like I'm going through a period of confusion and sadness over loss, that I'm not who I think I was. On the human level, it's also resulting in a bit of procrastination, not taking action to live my soul's purpose. Any comments or suggestions would be greatly appreciated. So something is sad and confused about not being who you thought you were. Is that you, though? So do you have to sort this out? So there's a sense of a separate someone that's been driven towards a purpose for so long. And then we start to see who we really are, and that sense of that isn't me becomes clearer and clearer each day. But what's left of that separate sense of self is freaking out. Well, what's all this being about then if I'm not really who I think I am? But can that sadness really result in procrastination and all of that if you're not identifying with it? So there is sadness, there is confusion in the body, like we were just saying, there's an emotion. What do you have to do about that? Can you do anything about that? And if you look at who you are, who you really are, what do you have to do with this? All this is some old fragment of identity coming up from who we thought we were. And you can just look at that and say, well, that isn't me. If it's not clear that that isn't you, then look and check. An imaginary separate person is having thoughts about itself. And now it's feeling sad. Do you have to do anything about that? Just as if you had a dream at nighttime and in that dream, one of the characters in the dream was sad, or you were sad in that dream, you wake up in the morning, can you do anything to cheer that being up? Do you have to do anything? Was that character real? So just checking who you really are and coming to see if it's your issue. Second one, dearest Helen, here is a lot of confusion. Almost every time I've been with other people, I know what I am. I recognize myself as infinite space without any boundaries. I feel an enormous hunger for attention amongst friends. And this is even though for many years I felt united with God when I'm alone and never feel lonely. I never feel lonely. Together with other people, I often lose the awareness of myself and get caught up in talking, becoming hungry, self-centered, and insecure. It feels completely out of my control. It happens so quickly. I can have a voice in my head telling me to stop talking, but I do not. I've been aware of it for many years. I have a sincere desire to transform it. It understandably pushes others away. Afterwards, it hurts terribly, and there's a lot of self-blame and shame. I feel so powerless over this. Again and again, it's seeing who I am, what I really am, and then just a confused, self-centered, chatty person emerges together with others. I've recently been diagnosed with ADHD, but what I am does not have ADHD. There's been a significant deepening of awakening over the last 5 years. In the last few years, more people are pulling away from me, even old spiritual friends. It feels like I have one foot in awareness of what I am and one foot in the confusion. The gift of all this is that I become more determined and committed in my self-inquiry. I can't fix this with my mind, that is clear. I meditate, contemplate, and conscious imagine daily. So there's something going on. What I'm reading in this, there's something going on that you really would like to stop. And you're caught in that place where you realize that you can't really do anything about it because you are not the doer. You are the awareness. But that seeing hasn't quite gone deep enough into that there's nothing you can do with this thing that's going on here, this karmic pattern. The reason it gets more intense after seeing who you are is because it's showing you this is not me. So most of the energy that you spend on this will be going to trying to get rid of this. Can you see that? Can you feel that? What if instead the attention and the energy went to seeing if this is your issue? If you are the one awareness, and there is only one being, one awareness that's omnipresent, appearing as yourself and all these other bodies that when you're with. If there's only one being, can you have a problem with other beings? Can you have a problem with other beings? Can you have something that comes up when you're with other beings? So it's important to really look, right, and see how many beings are in this karmic pattern? How many beings are in this problem? And your mind will say, well, this is just bypassing. It's not really solving this. We've got to figure out how to sort this out. But is it bypassing if you've seen who you are? There's a difference, right? And you can take a stand as the one being and refuse to play with any problem that includes more than one being. And I had to do that too. Mine doesn't like this. The separate sense of someone doesn't like it because it says, if I don't sort this out, it's going to get worse. But have you noticed how trying to sort it out is making it worse? Trying to sort it out hasn't really worked, has it? So clearly discerning, I am indivisible, formless, actually seeing it, experiencing it again, looking and seeing what you really are, finding out how many beings are there, just one. And then looking at this problem that keeps coming up that is 2, 3, 4, 5 beings or whatever, right? And for me, it just started to smell a little bit suspicious. It's like, I don't think I can fix this, nor do I need to, actually. My mind never liked that, never liked it. But nonetheless, the problems started to disappear because they were all coming from this sense of two-ness. And again, from the seeing of who you really are, it dissolves these, anything that seems to be a problem in duality will not be when you see it from the real self. That doesn't mean some action won't take place to resolve it on a physical level. Maybe your body will go to one of these friends and say, like, I'm aware of this, I'm really working on it. Just give me a little time. Or the body might sit there and do some self-inquiry or some contemplation on it. There's probably some embarrassment behind it, maybe some shame also. But start from the right place where there aren't any other beings and see what happens with it. This is really for everyone's question. It doesn't have to show up in this particular way, but everyone has a problem with another being, whoever that other being is. Okay, question 3. Hi, Helen. Thank you so much for taking the time to read my question, for all your teachings. My question feels difficult to ask as it seems to have different elements, but I'll have a go. To give some context, I've been meditating for many years and doing self-inquiry, contemplation, etc. I've seen on a few occasions that I am one with everything else. However, I have a very persistent mind, which also has obsessions and compulsions and draws me back into thinking often. At the moment, I'm also experiencing chronic fatigue, something I've asked you about before. It started a few years ago after having long COVID and feeling complete fear and uncertainty about what was going to happen to me, which then caused OCD to escalate and find myself in a deep depression. I feel I have come a long way since then because of my obsession with truth, and whilst I often wish for my old life back, perhaps my current circumstances are what allow me to do this inner work. Absolutely. But still, I have a lot of resistance to this situation. When you've answered previous questions of mine, you've said that if a situation isn't changing, then there's likely a belief which is playing out, which needs seeing and contemplating. I've done this and found a number of beliefs. I need to be loved and approved of by others. I'm not safe. There's something wrong with me. And for quite some time, I've contemplated, is it true there's something wrong with me, for quite some time. And although I reached a point of feeling the question was irrelevant, my situation hasn't changed, or at least it feels that way. I desire to be well again, able to leave my house and hold down a job where I won't let people down. Having this illness, which doesn't seem to be shifting no matter what I've done so far, makes me feel trapped and helpless, like I can't change my life. Or that I need to keep asking lots of questions until I find the right one. I feel like it's never going to end. At the same time, though, I wonder if I need to learn to accept this illness in order to go beyond it. If you could help me with this, I'd be very grateful. Thank you so much. So, there's a couple of things you said in there that caught my attention. The first is, what does it mean to accept this illness? What does that mean to you? Because acceptance can mean I don't actually like it, but I'm going to accept that it's here. And you've also said there, learn to accept this illness in order to go beyond it. So can you acknowledge that there's a part of you that would like it to go away. Quite often we're caught in this trap spiritually where we think we should be able to be okay totally with something. In this case, the body being ill and sick. And in other cases, there's this trying to get rid of it. So I'm trying to find a way to make sure it leaves, and I'm trying to also be okay with the fact it's here. Can you see both of those energies inside you and just allowing them both to exist? You said something also here that's I want to hold down a job where I won't let people down. There's a story in there that hasn't been investigated. I won't let people down. So you feel that on some level that this illness is making you let people down, right? A translation of that is you can't be who you need to be while your body is ill. That's what I'm reading from this. You said also that you feel trapped and powerless, I think. Can't find it now in this, but something like that. Again, I would look at that. Any strong emotion or a sense of limitation is showing us that we're still approaching this from a separate being. If someone else had this illness in their body, these challenges, what would you say to them about this situation? If I had these challenges, what would you say to me? If I was saying what you're saying in this message, would you agree with what I'm saying? So sometimes it just helps to come outside of the separateness a little bit to see, actually, I'm being really quite unfair on myself here. So the bottom line of this is there's several stories in there still, the powerlessness and feeling like you're letting people down. Those are all coming from a separate being. So I would look at those, definitely. And also see if someone else was saying the exact same thing, what would you do differently than you're doing with yourself? That much is very, very vital. And again, write back in if you need extra help with that. Last one, okay. The ultimate goal is to live authentically, aligning with the reality of who we are and bringing that into the human expression of life that one is also. That authentic living comes about through the lessening of fears that take us away from this authenticity. Anything that help reduce or remove these fears is okay, but ultimately these fears are built upon a false identity or ego. And as such, enlightenment or self-realization helps reduce and shed these fears in varying degrees. But one still needs to bring it back into this human experience to live fully and connected, if not not remain solely identified as awareness or apathetic in a new dogma or disassociation and avoiding reality, as I think many can end up doing. Once this understanding has taken place, it is a case of integrating it into our lives, where we then shed the subtler fears, shadows, as they arise to live more authentically, aligned with reality as or the truth. As such, enlightenment is just the first part and the new beginning. So I agree with you. I also want to add that it depends on what you mean by awakening or enlightenment. My definition of awakening is a seeing and a being. Because you've said here, and not remain solely identified as awareness, apathetic, in a new dogma of disassociation. So if you've really seen what awareness is, you will not be able to be solely identified. It is everything. Awareness is everything, including this human being talking. Non-duality does not mean exclusion of duality. It means not to. So in my definition of who I am, I can't afford to exclude anything. I can't say I'm not the human being. I tried this, of course. I went through that phase like everyone else. But I will never be apathetic when I'm really seeing what awareness is. I will totally be in love with the world. Totally. Knowing what the world and all these phenomena really are, I will be absolutely. Awareness is love, and it can't disassociate. Only when we've halfway seen what awareness is It's only formless. And that's true. But it's also appearing as all of this form. So the non-duality, the real true non-duality has to include the sense of duality, not actual duality, but the sense of it. Your human beingness, your relationship, your kids, your life, your work, your career, everything. It has to, or else it's not real. It hasn't gone deep enough yet. You cannot disassociate from anything when you are the awareness, because there's nothing else to disassociate from. What we do is you go, yeah, it's formless, therefore all form aren't real. And that's technically true, but it can be used as an avoidance. I did it. But then this recognition of what awareness actually is, the totality of everything. It's appearing as this body, these words, and all these beings in this satsang. If you are avoiding anything, you haven't really seen who you are. It needs to go deeper. And a re-embracing of your human existence. For me, awakening has left me feeling totally at home in my human existence. The good, the bad, and the downright challenging. Where you can't avoid anything at all, nor would you want to. You want to experience that from and as who you really are. Something difficult and something not so difficult is all the same then. So if there's any urge to avoid anything, any idea that you can disassociate, any sense that something isn't real, it has to all come back into this oneness of who you are. Oneness means one. If I'm saying there's something that I'm not, then I'm still in separation, still in avoidance. And I haven't really seen what it means to be the self. Non-duality means not two. It doesn't mean excluding duality. It means including duality. I can show up as one, two, many, or infinite. And only when I can see myself in all of those ways and include it in how I can show up, I can be a human being living a life. I can be everything, appear as all manifestation. I can be nothing at all. And I'm quite happy in all of those ways that I can show up. So I agree with you. I just wanted to nudge that a little bit deeper. Hopefully that is helpful. Okay, so we got 2 hands up. I'll take up to 3 questions. We've got 2 already. So is it Anamika or Hans? I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's Hans.
Hi.
Yeah, I have a question about what you just shared in the beginning. I can really see for myself that regularly there is condemning about something that is not okay. Then you say, is this reaction coming from the separate self? And I can see, yeah, it's coming from the separate self. And I would like to have some clarification on when you say, don't take it, don't take any ownership, because I have the impression that I don't take ownership. It's just a thought coming in to condemn me. It's not really me. So when you say this, is this because I should be able to avoid the thought? Or is it, what do I do with a thought coming in, that the thought condemning me? I don't know if I'm clear enough.
Can you do anything with a thought?
Well, that's what I think. That's when a thought is coming in. Sometimes I see, okay, I just see the thought and I don't do anything with it. And sometimes it's like, okay, I'm identifying with it. I'm believing it. That's what's happening.
And is there any negative emotion when that happens?
Yeah, some frustration.
Mm-hmm. So can you just let the thought be there?
Sometimes, yeah.
Why not other times?
It's like it's happening. It's not me. It's like I ask myself as well, what's happening now? Why are you going into the store? It's not you.
Are you going into it though? Are you the one that's drawn into it? A thought appears or some story, right? And attention goes to it. There's a lot of attention going to it. Is that you?
That's not me, but it seems to be me. I have the impression it's me. There's this impression, but I can see that it's not me.
What's your evidence for the fact it's you? Are you the one
Sorry?
paying attention? Are you paying attention to the story?
Hmm. Seems to be.
Seems to
But
be, but if we don't investigate, right, it goes on. Yeah.
I see what you mean. Yeah. I get this one.
So a story pops up, and attention goes to it, and the body starts to feel contracted, and you can feel something's happening. In that moment, you have a choice of what you think is going on, right? It can either be just attention is going on, or it's not. Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll go to Don when you're ready.
Yes. Hello, Helen. Thank you for taking my question.
Yeah.
And I'm curious about like the political climate in America, and around the world seems very contentious. And I'm experiencing some of that in my family of origin. And, I was in some peace. I went to like this conference of probably, I would guess, former evangelicals that are now more on the progressive side of Christianity last weekend. And, they're convinced that one candidate is a problem for global democracy. And I probably
Is this about religion and politics or something else?
what's about my oneness and family?
Let's keep it about that then. Let's keep it on track if you can. Thanks.
Okay. So I'm trying to understand how can I keep my center in an environment that in some ways sees me as a demon, and how do I keep my consciousness and my oneness?
So, what do you mean by consciousness and oneness in that moment? Do you mean stay in peace or not suffer?
Stay in peace when I'm around my family, and feeling like in some ways this is abusive of my mother and father, and at the same time trying to hold what's best, and doing my part to like be a loving being.
So, our sense of peace is never going to come from our external circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
It's only ever going to come from the recognition of who we are. So, in that moment, something's going on and some emotions are rising. If your sense of self is deeply grounded in who you actually are, that you include all of these beings, you're not just one person listening to another perspective or whichever. If you can recognize that you are the only being here, or that you're all the same being, then you're not going to lose your equanimity in that moment. The circumstances of the body and mind might be up and down in those situations. There might be some thoughts, some emotion arising, but you won't be suffering. And a peace will still be available. Peace and frustration or anger or whatever's arising in those kind of moments. Your sense of self, who you know yourself to be, is always going to override any external circumstances. Cannot be disturbed when you know who you are, even in those kind of situations. And those kind of situations are helping you to recognize what you really want, because you're experiencing in that moment what you don't want, right? So the circumstances are going to help you get clear on what you do want. So remembering who you are, right? Seeing it again and again and again and again until it becomes the predominant way that you're living. And then getting clear on what you actually want. And not necessarily telling anyone, but just being clear inside yourself. What do I actually want when I see my family, or when I go to work, or whatever the circumstance is that's going on? Not trying to find peace in external situations, because you really won't. They always change, right? Always.
Okay, thank you. So as a journalist who writes about some of this stuff, and I'm wondering, as this moves into my profession, and also my stays in my heart, that what you just said is 100% true, that none of this, I will not find peace in the external.
You're muted there, Don. You're muted, Don. There we go. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, continue.
How does that play into when I'm, writing about it for my living, and for my, you know, taking taking a position on, I think this leads more to love and enlightenment.
If you are grounded in who you know yourself to be, if you've seen that enough, then whatever comes out of your hands, typing, writing, speaking, all of it will not affect your state. Whatever it is that you're saying, it won't change your inner environment. And you might find that you're just writing in a different way, from a different perspective, a different depth of it.
Mm-hmm.
Always my answer is going to be to come back to who you really are, to do whatever you're doing, whatever the body's doing, do it from there, right?
Mm-hmm.
From the recognition of what's real.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm very boring. I've only got one answer, I'm afraid.
No, that's exciting. That's what we come.
Yeah.
To
Wonderful.
have the one answer. So I didn't. Thank you.
Thank you. Always best to keep it simple, right? And because coming back to yourself every time, whatever seems to be going on, as much as you can, just living as your real self, and it will unfold itself from there, it will resolve itself. Thank you. Wonderful. We'll go to Nate, last but not least.
I love Don's last comment. It's exciting. That's why we keep coming back. And I'm so grateful for all the other questions. They're very helpful to me. My question is about emotions. So my understanding that attributes of true nature are the things I love: love, peace, gratitude, fulfillment.
Also fear, shame, confusion, apathy, frustration, boredom, restlessness, resistance.
All right, now we got a real question going. All right, I had seen that emotion as a sensation with a story, and that would be anger, jealousy, sadness, fear. And I had my understanding that when I'm seeing true nature, that those other things I mentioned are not emotions, like love, peace. They're not the opposite of anger or hate. It's my nature. And so I can be by nature, I can be separate from my nature. Separation happens and these other emotions arise.
Separation seems to happen.
When separation seems to happen, then these emotions arise. But I wouldn't call love and peace emotions.
What if you don't call emotions emotions? What if you can just be showing up this way, whatever this way is in any particular moment? What if you're so one that you don't say, this is not me, and this is me? What if you just like can show up anyway at all?
Give me a second with that, because
Yeah.
that is quite different than how I had things set up in my cosmology.
And I get that we want peace and bliss and joy. I wanted that too. But it wasn't until I accepted, right now I'm showing up as being really irritated or frustrated or apathetic or feeling lost or whatever, right? I will be what I am in this moment. I will be authentically show up for whatever it is. There's an infinite number of ways I can appear. And eventually we have to stop sorting into categories, me and not me. We have to sort into categories initially, but the end point of our journey, we can't really say how we're supposed to be or what we're supposed to be.
So we can't say or know the end point of the journey and how we're supposed to be.
Yeah. There was an experience I had right after I really began to see clearly. Something happened in my life and it was not at all what I expected was going to happen. And there was strong grief, anger, frustration, total apathy towards life for a short while, and frustration, and a real deep sense of this is not how it's supposed to be after awakening. And I fought it, and there was a real resistance to what is. Finally, something just broke through and said, this is what is. Are you going to be with it? Including the frustration and the apathy and the stuff. And I just saw this is how I'm showing up right now. I can keep arguing with the frustration and the grief, or I can just be it. I can let it happen. And it showed me in that moment that I still had an idea of what awakening would look like. And awakening couldn't look like what I wanted it to, peace, love, and joy, and all that, until I destroyed all my ideas of what it should look like. We see awakened beings after they've gone through that process, and they're generally experiencing abundance and peace and all that stuff, right? All the good stuff. But that's only because they've got no idea how they're going to be in the next moment.
That's very helpful, very different. I heard you say earlier someone who was sort of wanting to accept something, but also subtly wanting to get rid of it, like some discomfort. So I'm aware of that, and I do my best to truly accept it. And to
It's
look,
okay to want something different.
yes.
And also you can want something different, but you can also accept how you're showing up right now. They are the same thing. You're showing up as the desire for something different. I'd prefer bliss than this anger. But I can appreciate I'm showing up as anger and desire for bliss. Both of those, right?
Yes. Say that again, please. I can be both knowing that it's there, wanting something different, but not be in resistance.
Yeah. The desire for something different than what you're currently experiencing is another way of showing up. So it has to be included inside being what is.
So isn't that the nature of suffering, being in resistance to what is?
the desire isn't resistance, right? If you push away that desire, I should be able to just be okay with being angry, is the resistance.
Yes. Yes.
Does that make sense?
It made total sense. So the desire itself is really, I would say, coming from true nature. It's not
Yeah,
from
exactly.
itself.
If some physical pain happened in my body, it happened while I was in the US, there was an acceptance of the pain. There was also an acceptance of, I don't want this, that arose inside at the same time. Of course, there's going to be something, whenever there's any lower frequency going through the body, there's going to be something that doesn't like it as well, right?
To be honest about that.
Yeah, exactly. And awakening, if anything, is total authenticity. This is happening and I really don't like it. This is happening and I really do like it. Both sides of that, right?
Okay, so you're helping me see that I did have this idea of what awakening looks like. That
And they're subtle, right? They're subtle. I'll always feel good. And you might have some negative emotion at the same time.
I'd like to just stay with this a bit further, because what brought this up for me was our discussion the other day about soul, more subtle energies, that resistance or separation is not personal. So the soul is having this incarnation in order to dissolve these beliefs in limitation. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. It's realizing where it has these desires and it hasn't allowed those desires to come in the fullness, to come from inside. It's been trying to get the desires from the outside, from other beings. So it has one more go around to realize I can never feel safe from my external circumstances. I can only realize I was never unsafe, right?
Yes, I can see that.
Yeah.
So from that discussion, I guess I had this thought that, all right, so these, let's say, belief that safety is out there, this is on a soul level.
Yeah.
And so then where I got confused, which led to this question, was, well, wait a second. I thought soul level is awakening. And so if this soul is in resistance itself, has beliefs that are leading to fear, that certainly doesn't sound like a great place to be.
Say that one more time for me.
That if the resistance is happening on the soul level, these beliefs in I'm a limited entity and I can be harmed,
Mhm.
then when I drop this body and I'm on this soul level, I thought, well, now I'm not going to. Apparently, I'm going to have these same issues there that I have here, because this is just a projection of what's going of the energetic contraction at the soul level.
But if you use this physical body to accentuate the sense of time and choice and realize that you can only fulfill those desires from inside, then you're done with it then, once and for all. The soul doesn't forget ever then. It's learned that lesson, right? Do you understand? Yeah?
Yes. Yes. So what I'm taking away from this is that I had this subtle belief of what awakening was, and that it would be free from any sense of lack or limitation.
It will be, but there's an intermediary stage where you have to allow a sense of lack or limitation if it comes up. Not like it, but allow it, right? And you never see an awakened being when they're in the middle of that process. Usually you see them afterwards when they've been what is in every which way. The moment that if a sense of limitation or lack comes up and you really feel, really go with it and feel it and try to understand it, at least that it comes from a sense of separation, it won't have to show up again. from awakening, though, after seeing who you are, that was all happening while you're still feeling peace. Peace and anger, peace and fear, peace and limitation.
Okay, so just because I'm seeing limitation and experiencing anger or fear does not mean the peace is gone.
Yeah. Only if I'm trying to reject something or hold on to something will I not be at peace. So anything can arise for an awakened being, any emotion at all, and there's no capacity to push away or grab hold of. The peace is there for stable and consistent because I'm not going into separation with anything. When you do that enough times, that particular phenomenon stops appearing for you, anger or whatever, right?
Yes, I heard Nisargadatta say that was when troubles come up, I allow them and they pass through. On my side, it's peace.
Yeah.
Your side is chaos. Come over to my side.
And as you do that, it's not only peace, there's deep joy and peace, even while you're feeling fear in the body or frustration. There's a deep contentment, even while there's shame coming up. Because again, it's what you're doing with that thing. And if I'm not trying to do anything with it and the desire that it goes away, it's all just happening inside me, right? This conversation is a beautiful illustration of what I was talking about at the beginning. So I'm very grateful for it.
I've been able to ask you 4 questions since retreat, and they have moved me quite a wonderful direction.
The first thing that's going to happen after you've seen who you are even once is life will show you what ideas you have about what it is to be awakened. And that's exactly what it did for me. It smashed those ideas. And at first there was a feeling of, oh my God, I don't even know what awakening is then. And the mind was really, well, what's all this been for? But as that sank in, it was like, oh, I don't know what awakening is. It's true freedom.
Yeah.
True freedom.
Yes. I remember you showed us during retreat that you would ask people questions and eventually they might get to the point where they say, I don't know. And then you ask them, how does that feel in your body? And they always said, wow, it feels really good.
Really good. And this is the one thing we hold on to a definition. I know what awakening is and I know what it isn't. It isn't what I'm experiencing right now. It isn't that, right? But if you forget that, if you throw that away, it will show up however it shows up. And when you don't mind how it shows up because you're feeling peace anyway, it tends to show up how you want it to, more and more.
Yes. So I get these bad moods and I've noticed I can say, well, it's not mine. But if I don't figure it out, it's going to come back again. That's where I get caught.
First time I felt really grumpy after really seeing who I was. I so enjoyed it. It was like really grumpy. I was just sat here and it was like the smallest little thing. I can't remember what it was. Something happened. And I'm like, and I just absolutely had a blast with it. I loved it. I was totally it. I went like, I'm going to be this completely. And it was so much fun. So much fun.
Okay.
Try it. You'll love it.
I'm
You'll absolutely love it.
Okay.
Mine says awakened being shouldn't be grumpy. Well, it happens. So
You mentioned at the other call, you gave us this wonderful explanation of or etymology of the word individual. And you said you had made a list of those words up.
yeah, somewhere.
Oh, and you
On
said
an old laptop somewhere. Are you asking me to try to find it? Yeah.
project you dropped, and I thought, well, give us the incomplete part of the project.
I'll see if I can find it. It's probably on a drive somewhere. I'll see if I can find it. Yeah.
Well, don't
No promises.
put too much time into it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Okay, it's a good place to leave it for today. Just a quick reminder, there won't be another satsang now till later in August, heading to India for a couple of weeks soon. So just check the calendar, make sure you have the right time. So thank you. Namaste.